Welcome to the MillzSpill, the place where we discuss trending news. Go ahead and hit the like and subscribe. Last month, I went live on IG every Monday discussing Black history and issues surrounding the Black community. Black History Month is over, but the truth is Black history is history, and we don't stop discussing it just because the 28 days is over. Today, we're going to revisit some of the conversations I had with Dez Da King on IG Live and answer the questions: how can Black people move forward today? And did Black people gain an empowering, independent, and culturally enriching experience on the back end of the civil rights movement? Last month, on an episode of What Now with Trevor Noah, comedian Trevor Noah and professor and sociologist Ruha Benjamin pondered the question, was desegregation the best thing for Black people? While their comments resonated with many, others were outraged, including comedian Hughley, who fired back with his own comments about what they said. We're going to get to Trevor Noah and Hughley, but before we get to that, I want to give you some background about my history so that hopefully you can better understand my perspective. Growing up, I had a diverse experience. My parents were in their mid to late 20s when they moved to Nantucket, Massachusetts.
So you were going to go to Kentucky?
No.
You know, it gets lonely up there in Nantucket.
Yeah, that place. They decided it was going to be a great place to raise children, and that it was. But it was also a very expensive place. As you can imagine, like most people in their mid-20s, my parents weren't fully economically established yet. And as the saying goes, they had to get it out the mud. That means they had to make nothing into something. As a young kid, we spent a lot of time in North Philadelphia, where it was significantly cheaper and I had relatives. With the high rent and high cost of living in Nantucket, turbulent times would have us going to Philly for brief vacations.
My parents did just well enough so that I could grow up poor around white people.
Anyways, this isn't a sob story, and I had a fun and great loving childhood, but I say all that to say that I interacted with people from different worlds growing up. I interacted with people like this.
I'm singing with feeling. You're singing about an impoverished family living in the ghetto who gave birth to their firstborn child in a manger. Chris, you can relate to this, can't you?
Not really.
And I've been in this situation.
Morning, little dude.
I know you. Share the tape. Share the tape. Share the tape. Share the tape.
Hey, what the fuck you just say to him?
I said good morning.
Good morning. Dick King, we don't do no good mornings around here.
What the fuck?
You good? This nut ass nigga with this Joe Familiar good morning, homie. Where you think you at, fam? Why do that nut ass shit around here? Beat you the fuck up out here in these streets.
Too accurate. I often found my conclusions about life somewhere in the middle. I would hear people in my small town of Nantucket having misunderstandings about people who lived in urban areas. And then on the other hand, I would hear people in Philly having misunderstandings about people who lived in small towns or suburban areas. As I grew older, I realized that the media often plays on our misunderstandings with polarizing information that pushes us to further extremes and a false view of reality. Recognizing the intentional programming of various subcultures in society, as a young adult, I became particularly interested in sociology and psychology. I went on to get a bachelor's degree in psychology and a master's in counselor education. I've been a licensed therapist for several years now, and it goes without saying, I've always been very analytical. Being interested in how people think, what triggers human emotions and actions, and how do we solve human problems? Which brings me to what we're talking about today. I remember when I was young hearing in school that the government solved the problem of slavery. I learned about the Emancipation Proclamation and Abraham Lincoln freeing the slaves. As I got older, 3 questions perplexed me. How is it that the same government that enslaved us for hundreds of years is now the source of Black liberation? Were we really given freedoms? Or were those freedoms an illusion to pacify us? Is the government's primary function to help us or to control us? As a college student, I became particularly interested in the history of corruption in 3-letter agencies and how these agencies manipulate us at a psychological level. How do the powers that be control the population? What is the psychology behind this control? These are things I began to research in college. My observation is that most people live in a matrix, illusions given to their community, accepted by their community, and as long as they never question or venture outside their community, those illusions will be reinforced as fact by their community. My situation growing up didn't allow me to live in a matrix, and because of that, I've always been more interested in truth. I think humans all desire truth at some level, but most only desire truth that affirms the matrix they live in. That being said, most will settle for a placebo in place of the real thing, because the truth isn't always comfortable. It's not always simple. It can be complex and have multiple layers. So people will overlook the less desirable truth, choosing instead to indulge in only the appealing bits, much like licking the icing off a cake and discarding the rest. I prefer to know the truth in its entirety, because a half-truth can be more dangerous than a lie. As I said before, the truth can be uncomfortable, and if we allow ourselves to think only emotionally, we'll accept a comfortable lie rather than a hard truth. I invite you today not to think emotionally, but to think with open-mindedness, reason, and with intellect. I invite you to think outside of the matrix you've been told to accept. Let's start with a question about history. Comedian and writer Trevor and sociologist and professor in African American Studies at Princeton University, Ruha Benjamin, talked about segregation. They brought up some interesting points. Check this out.
I found myself wondering, and this applies to America, and then maybe it'll go to other places in a different way because Finland ties in. Do you think that integration was the right move? And now I'm separating two things, because I know in America people are like, well, of course, I mean, there was racism and there was segregation. And I go, yeah, no, I'm separating them. Let's separate someone being oppressed and someone not being able to get a job and someone not being able to get a bank loan. Let's take all of those, the negative things away, because I'll put myself out personally and say, I think whether we're talking about gifted kids who are anomalous, let's say, to the norm, whether we are talking about and I mean anything that does not fit into a category, I think the part of the reason Finland is able to do it is because, have you been to Finland?
It's very homogeneous.
I've been to Finland. You know who's in Finland? Finnish people. That's it. And because they're all Finnish, there's an idea of like, no, we all head in the same direction. We all know what our actions mean. And that's a really powerful thing I've learned in communicating with other people. When I'm in a room with anyone where we start to tie together multiple things. So if I'm in a room with Black people, already there's like an implicit trust because we know what certain actions, words, and vibes mean. And then you're in a room with another African. Already. This person. Now, even if you shout at me, I know what your shout means. The same way an Italian knows what an Italian shout means. Yeah. Right? I know I'm prefacing it with a lot because it's a loaded question. Yes. But I would love to know if you think integration was the right solution, maybe, on the other side of, America, of civil rights.
Yeah. No, I don't. And I don't think it's actually that controversial when, if you understand that segregation and integration weren't the only options. Like within those two options, it may seem like integration is the more progressive. Like, of course, we don't want segregation. But again, when you're being integrated into institutions, into a culture that's a supremacist culture, that's a culture that feeds off of hierarchy, that feeds off of insecurity, anxiety, why are we being integrated into that? And so part of it is to question what we're being invited into.
Now, many agreed with what Benjamin Ruha and Trevor were talking about, but there were others that were outraged. Among those was comedian D.L. Hughley, who had his own things to say about it.
That may be the stupidest thing I've ever. And first off, I've heard enough from South Africans this year. That's enough. I'm like, okay. Between Elon Musk and Trevor, I don't need to hear about race from two dudes from South Africa. I heard enough. Black schools and HBCUs and our system exists. She could have said that virtually about every system that exists in America, from policing to banking to housing. Every single one is inundated with white supremacy. All of it. So, and the thing that I find that I resent the most is that our story always starts in the middle. HBCUs came as a result of what we couldn't have. Everywhere we live, every Black neighborhood is where we were told to live. Everywhere. Even school, like they want integration some places. I bet you want it in the Super Bowl because without black people, that shit would be rugby. So it's an interesting conversation to have, except that I think the outcome, I mean where she lands is a bit disingenuous. It's specifically, you can't just talk about education because the only reason you get educated is to indoctrinate, is to be involved in those other systems.
My understanding was one of the underlying reasons why it was so important to integrate schools is because black schools were grossly underfunded.
And still are.
And still are. But by integrating, you're creating more of a level playing field where everybody's in the same school.
It should be the same.
What happened was whatever schools white kids could go to, when black kids started going there, they left and they took their resources with them. So they, in fact, became, look at every school, look at all the schools we go to that at one time, integration meant that we could come and they left. Not only did they leave, they took their resources. So this notion that integration ever existed was wrong. White flight happened as soon as the integration started. And with them, they took their resources. So we still, in effect, have virtually the same thing.
I remember vividly the early 60s and seeing, people getting beaten over the heads with batons. I remember Mississippi and Alabama where they wouldn't let black kids into schools. It's better today. There's still racism, but it has gotten better over the years.
That is undeniable. But we try to put someone, Ruby Bridges, who integrated schools in Alabama, Louisiana, is still alive. She's 71. She's still alive. So what America tends to do is act like it's so long ago. Yes, they don't wear hoods and maybe they don't do the things that they did before, but some of it is still so entrenched, so some is so insidious that I think that people, this is my honest assessment of it. I don't think most white people agree with the motives of white supremacists and white nationalists. I don't think they like their words, but I think that they agree with their goals, which is to keep white people in charge. I think that they don't agree with their motives. They don't might not agree with their terminology or their verbiage, but they most certainly agree that white people should be in charge.
He talked about Trevor Noah not being an American, but Benjamin is. From an emotional, reactionary point of view, this may seem like Trevor Noah and Ruha Benjamin were talking about returning to racist segregation. But that's not what they were talking about. They're not advocating for it to be illegal for people to have friends of other races or for it to be illegal to marry someone of another race. Both Trevor Noah and Ruha Benjamin are mixed. They don't want racist segregation. Rather, they're questioning whether the desegregation that took place, which is really just assimilation, black people assimilating to the dominant culture, was that truly the best thing for black people? Did black people gain an empowering, independent, and culturally enriching experience by assimilating to white American culture? I would argue no. And I can make a somewhat unusual comparison to illustrate my point. White Southerners who lost the Civil War had to assimilate to the values of a newly unified United States. However, this assimilation was largely just Southerners adapting to a society without slavery. Now, some Southerners may disagree with that being the primary change they had to adapt to. Regardless of how you look at it, the fact is that white Southerners had to adapt to the changes in a newly unified United States. But notice one thing remained. White Southerners retained a distrust for the government that's been carried on by many to this day. They don't trust the institution that historically opposed their values and way of life. This distrust is reinforced and exacerbated with every history lesson that reminds them that they were conquered and forced into a different way of life. Black people also fought a type of war, separate from the Civil War, from slavery on through the Civil Rights Movement. Although it wasn't officially recognized as a war, black people fought and died for the right to exist with a sense of dignity and self-worth. What ultimately happened is that black people were granted the right to assimilate, which begs the question, did we really win the war? Martin Luther King's son would say no.
Some progress has been made, but we've got a long way to go before we actually realize the dream.
On that point, as we sit here today, we are a nation that is divided, fractured, struggling to communicate. What do you think your father would make of this moment in which we find ourselves?
What I can say is from his past writings, he wrote a book back in 1967. His last book was entitled, Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community. And I would say in the last quite over a number of years, 10 years, we've seen a lot of chaos. Some of it constructive, some of it destructive. I think Dad would always want to err on the side of how do we create constructive engagement? How do we build the beloved community? He'd be quite disappointed, quite frankly.
I don't think that Malcolm X's daughter and family, who have reason to believe that three-letter agencies were behind Malcolm X's assassination, would say that we won the war for justice.
Family members of Malcolm X have announced their intentions to sue the FBI, the CIA, and the New York Police Department for their handling of Malcolm X's 1965 assassination. The family claims new information has come to light, accusing the department of conspiracy and concealing evidence in the death of Malcolm X.
The truth about the circumstances leading to the death of our father is important, not only to his family, but to many followers, many admirers, many who look to him for guidance, for love. And it is our hope that litigation of this case will finally provide some unanswered questions. We want justice served for our father.
The lawsuit was announced Tuesday on the 58th anniversary of the assassination. Two men were found to be wrongfully convicted 2 years ago after spending decades in prison.
Perception is a huge motivator of action. White Southerners perceived that the Union was the enemy, and therefore they largely distrust the government that exists today. Black people are taught that the government was the source of their liberation. So while there's some distrust, there's also the idea that as long as we do these non-threatening marches, leaders can and will provide change for Black people. But are non-threatening marches the only thing that Black people did? I mean, did Black people just walk themselves to death and wait for white people to say, let's give those people freedom? They sure did walk a lot. Of course not. There were revolts, boycotts, strikes, and other forms of non-cooperation that disrupted the economy and shook up the powers that be, destabilizing their control. That's something that's less looked at. Leaders like Malcolm X, Marcus Garvey, Elijah Muhammad, Samuel Sharp are less spoken of in history classes. Oftentimes, those who force change are vilified in history books. For example, the Black Panther Party was labeled as an anti-white hate group as opposed to a strategic response to oppression and economic support for Black people in the 60s. All the while, the White House continues to be uplifted as the sole source of liberation for Black people. But what's the truth behind some of these legislations and policies alleged to help Black people? Check out this clip from one of the lives I did with Dez Da King on IG last month. I saw where it said that most of the recipients who have actually benefited from DEI haven't even really been Black people. It's been white women. So one of the things that's happened is that you'll have a company, they'll hire a white woman will become a CEO of a company, and then they'll celebrate that company as being a diverse company because there's a white woman who is the CEO. They use diversity as an umbrella over everyone. We think diversity, we think equity and inclusion. We go, okay, Black people are covered by that, and hasn't really benefited as many Black people as we would be led to believe. I was listening to Dr. Umar Johnson. He's a Pan-Africanist. He's very, very pro-Black, very much into the pro-Black Pan-African movement. And, there's things that he says that I disagree with. There's things that he says that I agree with. I've talked to you about this. I'm a person who kind of studies a lot of different kinds of people, and I come to a conclusion on my own thoughts about them. But he actually said himself, we shouldn't, as Black people, even really be caring about the eradication of DEI because it really did not benefit Black people at mass. They're saying that that this is going to lead to them getting rid of Black History Month as well. I don't know. What does this look like in the long run? I wonder are we trying to medicate our society with the same medicine and trying to fix it? and it's actually just poisoning us, and we're arguing for the same medicine that's poisoning us all the time. Like, give us Black History Month, give us DEI. That's what's gonna fix it. But the reality is that this medicine is not what's going to help. Maybe we do need to go in a different direction. I think a lot of these things, like the fact that diversity is used as a blanket to encompass Black struggles and just throw us just a paintbrush to put over all of us, I think that that does injustice to the Black community a lot of times. And a lot of our individual struggles as a community are not looked at because it's just blanketed over diversity. So the white woman is the CEO of the company, and now, woohoo, Black people, you should be happy, you know. I think that's an injustice. So maybe we don't need that. Talking about eradicating Black History Month. I've heard a lot of Black people, Morgan Freeman being one who actually was the first Black person I heard say that. And I remember my friends sending me a video with Morgan Freeman talking about getting rid of Black History Month. And I was like, man, he's the Uncle Tom. That was my mentality at the time. And my friend explained it to me and was like, think about this. When you learn about white history, you learn about it all year long. But in American history, you just learn all year long. Then Black history, you learn 1 month. And then, boom, it's gone. It's so insignificant. It makes you just think, all we got is a month long of history. And then, the rest of the year is about white people. You know, it really does minimize us as a people when we only learn about our history in that month. And then the focuses that we focus on during Black History Month: slavery, oppression, civil rights. Slavery, oppression, civil rights. What about before slavery? You know, we don't learn about those things. And you have to go outside of your curricular studies to learn that for yourself. Sometimes it does. It keeps us in a bubble where we're really not doing ourselves justice. Maybe we need to reinvent how we're going to handle a lot of issues, specifically in the Black community, when we're talking about these things, because a lot of Black people have become upset with the DEI and hearing about a possible ending of Black History Month. But are we taking the same medicine that's just making us sick, and we're just asking for that medicine over and over again? I mean, how much progression have we had from these things that we fight for?
28 days out of the 365-day calendar, we're hyper focused on, Black culture, which is by itself, I don't think that is bad. I don't think that is necessarily a bad thing. But when you just step outside and look at it, it's just like, like you said, we hyper focus for this short amount of time, and then boom, we're not focused really on it anymore. You know what I mean? So it's just like we should, if we're really, really that focused, we should be focused on it all the time. It should be something that is continuous throughout the year. You know what I mean? Like everything else, because Black history is history. You know what I mean? It isn't just one moment here and then it's not there anymore. It's history. It's part of it. It's part of everything. This one little month thing, I guess I'm kind of mixed about it because, I mean, I remember growing up and, Black History Month was like a big deal with my family and my friends. And it is a cool, I think it is a cool thing. Do I want President Trump really trying to get rid of that? Probably not. But if it's gone, I think us as a people will be okay. I think we'll be just fine because Black people are capable. You're capable. I'm capable. And the Black community is capable. We're smart. We're strong, and we can come together and we could still do great things.
I think one of the problems for us in our community, in the Black community, is that we've struggled with this for a while and we don't realize we've struggled with this. Since desegregation, it's like we want things that really came with segregation, but you can't have those things in a society where we're integrated. We had to assimilate into a culture that was not Black. That's just what happened. For example, before Black History Month became an actual celebration, Black History Month, you had the Pan-African movement on the uprise. You had people in the 60s and 70s, Black people started with the Froze, and they were talking about Egypt, and they started connecting Black people to Egypt and to all these things that were royal and kings and queens. That stuff started to happen. And then What did they introduce? Black History Month and education. And what did they say that we aren't? We're not kings and queens anymore. We're slaves. You see,
Right, man.
that's
Yeah.
what they did every
Yeah.
time. So it's like we want these things that are empowering from the same government entity that historically said that you're just a slave. And then when they gave us these things, they gave us things with the appearance of we're trying to include you, but it's really reinforcing this negative idea of you. It's putting this in your head. You came from slavery, oppression, civil rights, slavery, oppression, civil rights. So we don't think anything outside of that. As soon as we start going up thinking kings and queens, oh yeah, that's what before slavery. Look at this. Oh, look at this history. Oh, we're gonna give you Black History Month. You were a slave. Harriet Tubman. Harriet Tubman. And then, so we gotta stop. I feel like Black people, we gotta stop wanting things from the government. That's it. That's it. That's what it comes down. You can't want the government to want to fix your Black issues. And that was the difference with when there was segregation going on. Black people knew they couldn't depend on the government. So they were fixing their issues. In fact, in the Reconstruction era, the era right after slavery, Black people were building towns and they had a bunch of Black Wall Streets, areas that were prosperous. Of course, there was a lot more racism that was just very blatant. People could just come and burn the whole city down. And that happened a lot throughout history. But Black people were able to pull together, realizing they didn't need the government and they had to do it themselves. We have to do it ourselves. And that's really the only way we're going to see anything that's really about, when it comes to specifically for Black people, about progressing us. The only way we're going to see it is that we stop being angry with the government when they say, no, we're not going to give you that. No, we're taking this away. Now, okay, forget it. We'll do it on our own. That's
Right.
where we saw the prosperity, not when we tried to depend on the government. That's when they gave us Black History Slave Month. And then they gave us all these other things to keep us in a certain bubble and a certain limitation, as opposed to where we were before, where we were fighting against things and we were building towns and prosperity.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Let us come together and let us do things that we know that we're capable of doing, that our people in the past did and what we can do now.
I think the difference with now, if we could really pull together as like Black people, really pull together and build things and stop hating and, the crabs in the bucket mentality where you just pulling everybody down. If we could pull together like we have in the past, I think we wouldn't have as much blatant racism now. There might be an accidental wildfire that catches that catches the city. That might happen, and then boom, we gotta start again.
Right.
Accidental wildfires, but they can't, like in the past. They used to just run up in this town, start lynching people, and burn the
Yeah.
city down. They can't do that
They
now.
won't be able to do that. They won't be able to really do that like that. Yeah, you're right. So we're in a whole different time now. Camera, cell phones, people can see everything and hear about everything. So it'll be interesting to see what we can pull off now in this time now, and this with the technology now, platforms like this, people can communicate fast and quick. Man, yeah, we can build a community, and there's people out there trying to actually do this. Maybe that could be another topic we talk about.
The problem always comes from us looking for, as soon as we look for them to fix our problems, that's where the problem comes, because their solution is some kind of way of taking control. I have nothing against anybody, racial, ethnicity. I don't care nothing about that stuff. But I believe that historically, the reason why they did integration, like they finally were like, you know what? These people are in our country and they're doing stuff that's outside of our control. We need to control these people. And so, hey, integrate in, come into the system so we can have control. Because that's what the government is for. The government has to control the minds. Governmenta. Control governmenta the mind. All right. They got to control everybody inside their country. So, I'm for integration. I love that I have white friends and, friends of all different ethnicities And I have no hatred toward any of that stuff. But I don't think when the government is thinking of it at their level, that's not what they were thinking of. They weren't thinking of love everyone. They were thinking of, oh, we need to control these people because they're doing stuff apart from us, and we got to get control over this stuff. Regardless of your thoughts on DEI, it's interesting to note that white women benefited from it the most. Imagine that a wealthy white businessman could use his connections to set his wife up as the CEO of a company.
Yes.
And now that company is labeled diverse, all because a rich white man's wife is a CEO. All the while there were more qualified black men, black women, who could have took that CEO position. But they didn't even stand a chance because billionaires and millionaires were working the system. Unfortunately, this is the way a lot of these policies and legislation end up working out. At face value, they look like something intended to help black people, but in actuality, they serve a different purpose. We've talked about the miseducation that's led to us looking in the wrong places for solutions, but now I want to talk about another institution that's misled us. That is the black media. It's a fact that the media has historically been used by three-letter agencies to manipulate public opinion. Historically, music has been a cornerstone for the black community. We literally use it to escape slavery by putting messages in songs and spirituals. Music was also a coping mechanism to deal with stress and the pain of oppression, but it's important that we learn how to change strategies and adapt with the times. Unfortunately, three-letter agencies have recognized the power and influence of music in black culture. There's a reason they partner with rappers and black artists to promote political ideas to the black community. Now, do you think gangster rap was just a random change in musical culture? Or was it orchestrated to destroy the black community? I remember as a young kid, there was the idea that being real as a black man meant that you had to do something gangster. So much so that you had people who were never in the streets acting like they were from the streets. There's a lot of young black men behind bars now because they were arrested trying to be something that they aren't. The media is a powerful tool and is used to manipulate everyone at some level, whether you're white, black, Republican, Democrat, whatever. The media has a narrative to feed you, and that's because it's controlled by corporate interests and people of power who have their own plans for each of us. Think about this. The KKK has significantly shrunk since the 1960s, but the media would have you believe that they are our primary enemy, the ones who are controlling everything. But do you really think some country backwoods white people are the ones controlling black oppression? The truth is that they're pawns being used for votes and political talking points. Republicans use them for votes. Democrats use them as a group that they can focus their campaign on. They can make the promise to end bigoted and racist groups, never actually fulfilling that promise when they get into office. At the end of the day, neither one of these parties really wants to see the KKK disappear. I mean, why get rid of the problem when you can profit from the problem?
You see, Donald Trump was put into office by white nationalism, by divisive conspiracy theories, and by a long history of white supremacy in this country. Conspiracies of war against white America, conspiracies of the government attacking white Christian America. These conspiracies have existed in white communities across America for decades. Donald Trump simply provided legitimacy to these conspiracies by using key and designated language in his campaign that caused white America to circle in a shark frenzy and cast their votes. I was raised in the mountains of western North Carolina in a white little neck of the woods, often referred to as a holler. I grew up with the Confederate flag in my front yard, and my neighbor had one in his, and this neighbor in his, and the guy down the road, everywhere. That flag was a sign of our heritage. At least that's what I was told. What heritage, might you ask? A heritage of simple, hard-working Christian folk. Patriots who love their country and their neighbor, as long as your neighbor looks like you. Because I'm here to tell you, I didn't have any black neighbors, In fact, you had to go about 20, 30 minutes down the road before you got to the black neighborhood, or where I'm from, they refer to as the bad part of town. You see, racism, where I'm from, is so casual, it's hidden in plain sight. I didn't know it existed. The N-word was daily vocabulary. I didn't even know that was a bad word. Growing up, I learned that people who sag their pants are thugs. Growing up, I learned if you live in government-assisted housing, it's because you're too lazy to get a job and work hard like us. Growing up, I learned that these people get food stamps and sell drugs. You see, one day my dad was going on a rant about just that when a guy knocked at my door. So I went and let him in. The guy went and sat with my dad, handed my dad some money. My dad weighed out the right amount of marijuana and gave it back to him. You know, a drug deal. And then my dad took the money from that drug deal and he put it in his wallet, right next to some red, yellow, blue, green food coupons. You may have heard of them. They're called food stamps. Did my dad see the hypocrisy of us having food stamps and selling drugs while he's telling me about these people getting food stamps and selling drugs? No. Because my dad would explain it like this: son, I work hard and I pay taxes, so I deserve these food stamps. And I don't make enough money and I want to provide for you children, so I got to sell these drugs to make ends meet. You see the hypocrisy of that. The cognitive dissonance is cringeworthy. How could my dad, an otherwise intelligent man, be so ignorant? Easy. It's a toxic cycle of white supremacy and white ideology that has survived the test of time. You see, during slavery, only rich white people could afford to enslave other people. But to prevent the poor white people from empathizing with the plight of enslaved black people, what the rich white people did was this. They told the poor white people, hey, if you work hard, you can be like us. And what they did was they gave them management positions on the plantation, called them overseers. That way they were more important than the enslaved black people. The idea was simple. You might be poor, but hey, at least you ain't black. That ideology, that mindset has survived the test of time. Fast forward to my dad sitting in the living room ranting about these people with food stamps and drugs while selling drugs and using food stamps. I can hear it. We might be poor, but at least we ain't black. This is a cycle.
Did you hear that? Wealthy whites didn't want poor whites to partner with the slaves. So they created this dynamic between poor whites and black slaves. And don't forget this, the KKK was created by the Democrats to resist Reconstruction, which was the era following the Civil War. The KKK was used to intimidate black people and oppose Republicans in the South. So both Republicans and Democrats have a history with the KKK, and they both use them now, whether that's for votes or whether that's to use them as the target of their social justice platform, in which they can make empty promises and pander to black people. So how do we respond? Do we ignore the KKK and go to sleep? Or is there another response? Check out how residents in Lincoln Heights, Ohio, recently responded.
These aren't police officers or soldiers.
They're business owners, their fathers, their sons, daughters.
These are civilians, members of the Lincoln Heights Safety and Watch Program.
It's a duty. Okay, let's go.
The duty, protecting their neighborhood, the majority black village of Lincoln Heights, Ohio. After neo-Nazis held a rally here last month, carrying rifles, waving swastikas, and hurling racial slurs, just moments before children were let out of school. At the time, law enforcement officials said the neo-Nazis did not break any laws, but an investigation by county prosecutors is ongoing. Weeks later, the KKK came with these flyers.
First African-American community above the Mason-Dixon line of staff.
Safety and Watch Group spokesperson Durrance Daniels says the police did not do enough, which was more chilling because the town was founded in the 1920s as a safe haven for black residents.
Lincoln Heights is our home. If somebody broke into your home, you call the police, and the police says, you know, if they do it again, we haven't broken any law, so we're just going to allow them to break into your home again. What would you do?
Are you worried at all that having a potentially armed response could just create more friction, create more danger?
I'll answer that by saying I've never felt safer as a black man in my community than I have right now.
The mayor of Evendale, which oversees the police force that responded that day, said in a statement to NBC News, "Our emphasis on de-escalation and public safety resulted in the incident's resolution without injuries to any of the persons involved." But residents here say they can't afford to wait. Every day, the Safety and Watch Group escorts children to school and patrols the streets.
Why do you all wear masks?
Those Nazis, we have reports of them finding our backgrounds, so we're not hiding ourselves from the residents, but we're protecting our family from what we're doing out here.
While many locals do support the security group, some, like business owner Eric Ruffin, say they wish the group wasn't needed.
We don't want to become what we hate. You know, we don't want to become a group of people that walk around feeling like we have a reason in America to have to protect ourselves.
And this community
Stand up.
is not backing down. Morgan Radford, NBC News, Lincoln Heights, Ohio.
Now notice the negative connotation in the questions the interviewer was asking. Are you worried that an armed response could create more danger? And the business owner saying, we don't want to become what we hate. There's an implication they want to give the viewer. But it was Isaac Newton who said, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. The Second Amendment was created so people could protect themselves from tyranny and unlawful violence. It's interesting that some people who would criticize this community's response would praise others who responded the same way when they thought their lives were being threatened. I blame this on educational indoctrination. We've been led to believe that it's virtuous for black people to respond to violence with peace, while white people get a different message. If you're white and someone threatens your family or children, it's patriotic to stand your ground and bear arms for your loved ones. Today's oppression is largely psychological. Where one time they put physical chains on us, today black people are chained down by ideas and false concepts that render us powerless. Believing you should be a sitting duck when you've been shown it's duck season is a foolish idea. But ideas like this are fed to us by those behind the scenes in education and in the media. So be aware of groups like the KKK, but be more aware of those behind the scenes who hide behind the mask of ally when the truth is much darker. The real problem is the people we don't see. People in Congress, executives, producers, people behind the scenes. The media encourages us to want to be the people we see. The football players, basketball players, singers, celebrities. But oftentimes it's the people behind the scenes that we don't see that wield the power. We need more black people to want to be those positions we don't see. Some have proposed that we should have our own nation, an allotment of land where we can elect officials who have our interests at heart. A super Black Wall Street. But we all know what happened to Black Wall Street. Listen, we saw what happened when a black man tried to start a black party.
We're not standing by no more getting killed. It would be irresponsible of me to have us hold our vote hostage. But it would also be irresponsible of me to just let this moment go by. So I'm launching one of the boldest movements that I've ever launched. It's called Our Black Party. Okay. It's time for us to have our own black political party, unapologetically. Because right now, if you look at the debates, we're not even a part of the conversation. Not at all. We're not a part of the conversation. We don't have any political power. We don't have any political leverage. And so we started Our Black Party, and I've stepped up and put the money behind it.
Just kidding. No, you're not. Diddy tried to form a black party and also stood against racist treatment in corporate America. He consequently had a smear campaign launched against him, funded by multi-billionaires. Think about it. The same lawyer who's representing the client who filed a false assault accusation against Jay-Z and is being investigated for attempting to extort Jay-Z is the same lawyer who's representing most of the alleged victims of P. Diddy. A lot of stuff is coming out about this lawyer. Brothers and sisters, we have to stop this crab in a barrel mentality when we see a black man falling. And I know what someone will say. What about Cassie? Yes, what he did to Cassie was wrong. But that's not why they're trying to take all his money and lock him up for life. He's not being charged for that. The man is who is going to profit from this the most. While we laugh, they laugh to the bank. All right, whatever. Just let the people watch my podcast episode, Behind Diddy's Downfall. They can decide for themselves what they think. Now, can I get back to the topic at hand? Did you know the same tricks that were used in the transatlantic slave trade are used today? Back then, Europeans arrived to the West African coast, trading goods, guns, and other materials for slaves. At first, African tribes would give their prisoners of war over as slaves in exchange for the goods and guns that the Europeans had to give them. But then they ran out of prisoners, so they raided neighboring tribes by force. Using the guns that the Europeans gave them, they were able to kidnap free people and give them over to the Europeans in exchange for more guns and more goods and materials. There was infighting and conflict, with kings being overthrown, and corrupt rulers who aligned themselves with colonizers being installed into power. These kings exploited their positions, enriching themselves at the expense and sacrifice of their own people. Today, the same thing happens. Western nations will pay and give weapons to nations or rebels who will go into places like the Congo, raid and pillage, and then supply the West with the minerals that they were able to gather. Leaders who try to have economic independence and not cooperate with the West are often unalived. And corrupt leaders who enrich themselves by cooperating with the West at the expense of their own people are put into place.
We work many different ways, but perhaps the most common is that we will identify a third world country that has resources our corporations covet, like oil, and then arrange a huge loan to that country from the World Bank or one of its sisters. However, the money never goes to the country. Instead, it goes to our own corporations to build infrastructure projects in that country, power plants, highways, industrial parks, things that benefit a few rich people in that country, as well as our own corporations, but do not help the majority of the people at all. And yet the whole country, is left holding a huge debt. And it's such a huge debt they can't possibly repay it. So at some point, the economic hitmen go back and say, you owe us a lot of money, you can't repay your debts, so give us a pound of flesh. When I failed to bring them around, to get them to accept these loans, to get them to put their countries into servitude, then I knew that standing right behind me were what we call the jackals. And these are people who overthrow governments or assassinate their leaders. And both Jaime Roldos of Ecuador and Omar Torrijos of Panama were assassinated by CIA-sponsored jackals because I failed to corrupt them.
This happens on a micro level in the US. Political groups that are supposed to help Black people enrich themselves at the expense of Black people.
How much have you spent on charitable causes this year?
Yeah, you know, it's hard to gauge.
All right. So what about the year before last year?
Oh, well, that year, that's a good year. Yeah, it's just blurry. I be doing so much.
BLM? Since you want to be so Black Power?
BLM is a scam.
Clip that. Send it to the fucking news.
BLM was literally a scam. They had bought mansions, and you probably wouldn't know anything about it because you don't care about Black people. So you don't follow Black
I do care about Black people. Look at my chocolate. You're mad.
It's a disguise.
You're mad. I think I'm literally the most pro-Black person in this room.
Because you have an all-white staff?
They fatten their pockets, while many Black areas suffer poor education from less tax money pouring into schools. Neighborhoods overrun with liquor stores, lack of accessibility to healthy foods, miseducation about Black history, and various socioeconomic issues. On another hand, many rappers promote violence and self-destructive behavior in their music. They do this to get paid more and to be promoted more by the industry. In other words, they benefit themselves at the expense of the communities they claim to represent. Many of them haven't even lived the lives they claim, but they claim it because they're paid to do so.
Because I was on rap stages rapping about, you know, violence and guns, you know, that we get paid to rap about that stuff. They actually pay us more.
I don't know what's this opioid thing, man.
Well, being a crackhead wasn't cool back then. Being a crackhead wasn't cool. Now they seem like they're making it cool to be drinking lean and syrup and
it's the most dangerous. It's the most dangerous thing that's facing our our society.
So why sign an artist that would promote that? Don't you think that's hypocritical though? You're saying the
it's
opioid problem's a problem.
opportunistic. Yeah, I got people to feed. I got a business to run.
This music in turn encourages destructive behavior, helps boost prison populations, and promotes overall unproductive and unfruitful behavior in the Black community. Behaviors that keep us at the bottom tier of capitalism, among the working poor. Am I saying don't listen to rap? No. Just saying be aware. Research suggests that music affects behavior. According to the article entitled Violent and Pro-Social Music, evidence for the impact of lyrics and musical tone on aggressive thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, violent music generally has a greater influence on children and adolescents who have uninvolved parents or lack mentors. Make sure your children are getting the right messages from you and that they have good mentors in their life. Scientists have noted that for women, the human brain stops developing around 22 years old. But for men, around 25 years old. Get this, young Black men are particularly vulnerable to making bad choices between the ages of puberty and 25 years old. Good mentors are important. Children shouldn't find all their mentors on TV or on YouTube. Oftentimes, the people we have on television and the media are put in position for negative intentions.
I just told you a little while ago, these leaders that they call leaders, this included Lena Horne, this included Dick Gregory, and this included comedians, comics, trumpet players, baseball players. Show me in the white community where a comedian is a white leader. Show me in the white community where a singer is a white leader, or a dancer or a trumpet player is a white leader. These aren't leaders. These are puppets and clowns that have been set up over the white community and over the Black community by the white community and have been made celebrities and usually say exactly what they know that the white man wants to hear.
Why are we listening to people who lack education on complex situations?
Stop worshiping celebrities so much. Just don't listen, don't pay attention. I remember right around September 11th, Jarule was on MTV. That's what they said. They said, we got Jarule on the phone. Let's see what Ja's thoughts are on this tragedy. Who gives a fuck what Jarule thinks at a time like this, nigga? This is ridiculous. I don't want to dance. I'm scared to death. I want some answers that Jarule might not have right now. I think when bad shit happens to me, I'll be in the crib like, oh my God, this is terrible. Could somebody please find Jarule, get hold of this motherfucker so I can make sense of all this. Where is Ja?
We need to control our media, our art. You know, there's a saying that art imitates life, but Oscar Wilde put it as, life imitates art far more than art imitates life. And we can see that in our society. The media controls our image, the concept we have of ourselves. American media as it stands largely just allows us to assimilate. Blackness is only viewed within the scope and to the extent that it conforms to the ideas of white America. Our characters have to fit into the white story and imagination. America rarely allows us to be independent and have our own. For example, you have the Marvel Universe. You have a group of predominantly white superheroes and some Black superheroes that share a common enemy with their white counterparts. Whether that's Thanos, Loki, and yes, even Killmonger. Notice that he wasn't just a threat to Wakanda, but he was a threat to white civilization. Why can't Black people have their own superhero series apart from a Marvel or a DC? A series where Black stories speak exclusively to Black experiences and not those shared with white people. Is it that there aren't enough Black creatives? Of course not. There are plenty of Black creatives. I think a bigger issue is that Black people have accepted crumbs when we can have our own plate. We want to sit at someone else's table when we have the means to set our own. We celebrate when white characters are recast as Black characters, when in reality it's a nod to the standard that white creators set. We're celebrating feeling validated and made worthy enough to play their characters. I mean, have you ever seen a Native American or any other people celebrate being cast as a white character? Black people struggle with a negative self-image. The truth is that we're already worthy, and no one has to make us worthy. Again, we need to have our own media, where we control our image. Whiteness is the standard for American media, and the media influences our image of self. This is why a lot of black people bleach their skin, wear weaves, or they say things like, well, white people do it. Many of us have set our idea of good and bad based on whether white people accept it. Black creators and media personnel need to come together and create our own movies, TV shows, news networks, apart from depending on partnerships with white media outlets. Being part of white media outlets is contingent on our image being under their control, which is why we should support creators like the creators of Black Sands, a black anime created by a black husband and wife. Hollywood won't promote productions like this because it goes outside of the parameters they'll allow for blackness. Hollywood will continue to control the black image and dictate black culture as long as we accept it and don't create our own. I hate to say it, but this is what Kanye West was talking about.
My dad was a Black Panther, but, when Disney makes Black Panther, now when you look it up, you don't see my dad protecting his neighborhood. You see this character that's made for black people to idolize that was designed by a white person and put out by a white company. So it's controlling the narrative to say, we're going to show you Harriet Tubman, we're not going to show you Nat Turner. And they do it every chance they get. Maleficent, they called her race of people the Moors. And the Moors are, and I just saw it again. I was just like, yo, if you erase our history, most black people, we think we came from slaves. We don't know our bloodline, and we're given Black History Month, and we take that like it's some gift to us. No, it's a programming to us, because also what they show in Black History Month is us getting hosed down, reminding us that we were slaves. Like, what if we had, remember when I cheated on you month? Remember when you first found the text messages? How does that make you feel? It makes you feel depleted.
Obviously, Kanye West has responded very negative to Adidas and other industry powers. I don't at all condone his behavior. He alleges he's been wronged in the industry and that a certain group owns the majority of the industry. He went on to wear swastika t-shirts. I want to be clear that I don't condone that at all. If you're having a problem with specific people, name them and leave it at that. But I can't throw the baby out with the dirty bathwater. Even a broken clock is right twice a day. What makes the media so dangerous is the addition of social media as another avenue that propaganda can be pushed. A quick Google search will show you that Mark Zuckerberg is just a face. The people that really run Facebook and Instagram are from this three-letter agency. And we all know Elon's involvement in politics. He owns Twitter. So social media is owned by them. This is why we need to create our own social media, movies, news, and so on. We need to create grants and scholarships that support us, that can help propel us into ownership positions. Did you know there's a Jewish loan created by Jews that Jewish people can get, and it's interest-free? There's enough millionaires and billionaires and black people in the middle class that can invest in creating a similar loan for black people. We need to follow this type of example of supporting our own. The complaint comes up that black businesses are often rude and overpriced. I think the problem is often one of two issues. Number one, some black business owners feel entitled, and they feel like black people should just support them even if they have poor customer service. These type of businesses are often run by snobby people who are generally rude to all of their customers. Bad service is always going to be overpriced because essentially it's not worth a damn. Number two, undervaluing black business. Many black customers undervalue black business. They'll look for the deal at the black establishment, but had it been a white establishment, they would have accepted whatever price was offered. We have to make sure none of that describes us. No one is entitled to anything. I encourage us as black people to have so much ownership that if you go to one black business and it's a rude establishment, then you can just easily go to another one. Ownership is key. Listen to Rashad Bilal discuss this on The Breakfast Club.
All of our billionaires became billionaires because of partnerships.
Mm-hmm.
White billionaires became billionaires because of ownership.
Innovation.
It's different. We've seen what happened with Ye. They could take a partnership away. Now you're not a billionaire yet. You see what happened with Diddy. You can't take Elon Musk because it's ownership. He has ownership in the company. It's in the stock market. There's 5,000 companies that's on the stock market. 7 are black. 7 out of 5,000.
And that's a decrease. It used to be 12.
Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's what I'm saying. People don't really look at it from that standpoint. It's like,
well, when you say take away, they did sever ties with Ye, but they still had to pay him out.
no, but I'm saying he lost his billionaire status because it was tied to Yeezy brand, right? And Yeezy brand was Adidas, essentially. So he owned 100% of Yeezy, but it was really nothing without Adidas. So when Adidas severed his ties, because people look at a billionaire, it's not like he had $1 billion and he's just swimming in it like Scrooge McDuck. Like, it goes by the valuation of your company. So they could devalue your company at any given time. Now they take away $600 million overnight. This has happened 2 times in the last 4 years with black people. Because, like I said, our billionaires are not billionaires from ownership. Our billionaires are billionaires from partnership.
I agree with you 100%. The only reason I don't like using those 2 examples, because they made poor choices.
No, but a lot of people make poor choices. But what I'm saying is that you can't erase some of it. Like Donald Sterling, he made poor choices, but he got richer.
And made more money.
But that's what I mean. Richer.
He can't sell it, but that's what I mean. Like, that's the
you
same
can't
thing.
sell what you don't own.
We have to respect black business and give it the same regard, if not more, than others. We also need to hold groups like the NAACP and other groups that claim to represent black people and hold them accountable. We need to hold them accountable when corruption takes place. We need to put pressure on them, to put pressure on the right people to make things happen. We're not going to accept cover-ups when terror and abuse happen to black people. So we need strong political forces that aren't compromised. More of us need to aspire to be owners, creators and owners of tech, social media apps, news networks, television, movies, grocery stores, hospitals. You name it! Independence and ownership is key. As much as we can do for our own, apart from others, apart from partnerships, apart from government, is key.
For me, the real revolution is when we have the power to put our people together without assistance from the same people that's oppressing us.
Right.
And it's all right to use aids like EBT or housing, but these shouldn't be long-term goals if we can help it. These aids require us to be socioeconomically disadvantaged. The goal is always to rise up and never stay down. The powers that be would like us to stay down. So assistance like EBT and housing are made very known to us. Complete and total dependence on these aids is encouraged. It keeps us at the bottom tier of our capitalistic society. A capitalistic society thrives on a poor working class and consumerism. Black America has been manufactured to be both poor working class and consumers. Some of us have built our lives around making sure we get aid at the expense of letting go of our ambition for more. We've come to settle for an assisted life, punching a clock for pennies when we have $1 million ideas. We have to remember to build our own dreams, or someone will hire us to build theirs. Again, this isn't a knock on using assistance. Assistance is needed at times. What I'm suggesting is that if you have the opportunity, don't settle if you can have more. Also, black people, this can't be said enough. Stop hating on other black people when they get ahead. We have to stop hating on each other. The powers that be have not only created a black versus white dynamic, they've also created a black versus black dynamic in order to maintain control. How can we possibly focus on progress when opposition not only comes from outside, but it comes from within? Stop hating on black people when they finally get that business, that house, that car. When they finally become successful. There's a trap in our community where we push successful brothers and sisters away from the community by saying they don't relate no more. They turn white. They're not real. Things are often said because of jealousy. There are families that have fallen out because of jealousy. When we see someone doing something great, we can choose to be jealous or be inspired. Be inspired by those who do great things. Jealousy causes gossip, complaining, and keeps you stagnant. Inspiration moves you to action and achieving your goals. When you're jealous, your questions are rhetorical. When you're inspired, your questions are inquisitive. Be inspired. That way you don't push people away with hate. These are potentially powerful resources in the black community, but due to hate, a lot of brothers and sisters find themselves socially ostracized and accepted by people outside of the community. How is it that poor black folk can do and say whatever, but black folk with a little bit of money gotta walk on eggshells? We're so quick to be broken and offended by successful black folk. I suggest this is rooted in jealousy, wanting what others have, sometimes even a sense of entitlement, We think that we're entitled to have what others got through hard work. Each one of us needs to be accountable for our portion in the revolution. Your failure is not your successful family member or friend's fault. Your failure is likely due to you choosing to sit in jealousy instead of being moved to action from inspiration. The road ahead isn't easy, but like Frederick Douglass said, there is no progress without struggle. So don't give up. That dream you have is a potential future, a destination at the end of a path. You just need to put the work in and walk it out. Make sure to like and subscribe.